So the first step obviously would be going to AppEARS, and I have it right here. And so just launch the application. And so now you're here. And so usually what you are going to do is go to this extract tab and go to an area sample. At some points you'll want a point sample, but usually you're going to want an area sample. So that's redirecting. Okay, and so here you'll go to start a new request. And so you give your request a name. Just name this test request. And so there's two ways to start this. You either have a shapefile from a different program, or it was given to you, and you can click here like to add the file and whatnot. Or you can go over to this map, go over to a region you want. I'll zoom into the West Coast and say you want an area of Los Angeles.
And Joel, did you ever work with any shapefiles? I never gave you any shapefiles, did I?
No, usually I just.
But Fernando, you had some shapefiles at one point, yeah.
Yeah, I can show an example of generating a shapefile after this AppEARS tutorial.
Although it makes sense more like how Joel just said, where it's usually given to you because somebody wants it for some. Yeah.
Quick question: are you guys familiar with GeoPandas?
I think so. Yeah.
Would you know if there's a way to export GeoJSON files or the other thing from GeoPandas?
Yes.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, I guess Fernando can show that later. But if you don't have a shapefile and you just want a general area, you can go down here and click one of these shapes, and boom, you have a shapefile. So then you choose your dates. Just going to use some examples here. So December 1st to January 1st. And so you can check this box if it's recurring, and you can do a different date format, but usually you probably just want a specific set of dates. So yeah, so now you have your date set, and so now you search for the product you want to use. So since we're working with ECOSTRESS, I would search ECOSTRESS, and depending on what you want to do, you can choose any of these options. So say I want the land surface temperature of this area of Los Angeles. So you'll click that. I'll scroll down to LST, so land surface temperature, and then I'll click add, and I'll add that in. And then you can also add other data products that you want. Say I wanted evapotranspiration. I can do instantaneous, I'll add that, daily, whatever you need.
Actually, with AppEARS, you can do more than just EcoStress too. You can do there's other satellites that you can play with as well, like Modus.
Yeah. So now you have the product, the layers that you want downloaded. File format, GeoTIFF. That's what I usually select. And then for projection, I go with native projection. And then I would click submit.
Yeah, so if there's any need for any transformations, I typically handle it in QGIS.
And then you click submit. And then your request is, if it's green, that means your request went through, obviously, and then it'll tell you if your request is too big, for example, it'll let you know that it couldn't go through, and so maybe you want to change the dates that you're selecting and do it in chunks, or make a smaller shapefile. So yeah, and so to see all your requests, you can go to explore. This is an example I did earlier, just to, once your request goes through and download, usually it doesn't take too much time. Sometimes if there's like, I don't know, AppEARS problems or the system is down, it'll take a while, but usually doesn't take too much time. So here you have all, you can click on your request here and it will show you a bunch of data about what's in it. To get the actual data, you click this download button right here.
Oh, this was a previous request you did earlier, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so here are all the basically GeoTIFF files that was found in that time frame. And so there's 46 here. And so if you want more information about each of these files without having to like download each of them and look at them, you can download this statistics file right here, and it'll give you information about every single file in this request. So yeah, that's basically how AppEARS works, or how I use it usually.
How long does your request stay there for you to download?
That's a good question. I think I actually don't know like the exact time, but you can see that this one has expired and it was May 2021.
Right.
So, or yeah, May. So I think it expires after maybe a month or so, maybe longer. But yeah. So yeah, that's basically how AppEARS works.
And then you would download
yeah.
all the files with the single button, or do you download individual ones? What do you tend to do?
So depending on what I would need, I would probably look at the statistics file first. Here, I can download it and show what it looks like. Here, let me stop sharing my screen and share. So here, this is each of the files and has the date, the orbit number, the scene ID, and then also min and max, range, mean. And usually based off like this, I might download specific files, or I might just download all of them and just go through each of them and look at them. But yeah, so I would look at this file and then make a decision based off of that.
And how do you make your decision?
Well, I guess there's many factors. If I'm looking for like a specific, I guess, temperature range, if I want to like, I guess like, for example, if I'm like looking specifically in the data for like, I don't know, a heat wave, then I would probably look for files that have like abnormally high temperatures and download those and look at those, or just like depending on what you want to do with the map. Or you could just download all of them and choose which one's best off of that.
Can you tell which scenes are too cloudy before you download?
Actually, I not really from this. I usually would download them and see if it's cloudy, and then base my decision off of that. I don't know if Fernando has any insight.
Yeah, the count is a pixel count, and if it's really low, then you can assume that it's going to have a bunch of cloud cover. So I don't know the size of the rectangle that we drew, or if we upload a shape file, but if you have a general idea on how big how many 70-meter pixels would fit within the size of that rectangle, then you can gauge kind of like by just eyeballing these pixel count, you can gauge how cloudy the scene is. But that 484 would definitely be something that like probably be not very useful. Of course, that is not to say that like something in the average is going to be always useful, because maybe, and it happens a lot, where you download the scene and you think like this one's perfect, this one could be perfect, and you look at it and right on the thing that you want to observe is where the cloud was. So that could be too bad. So it's safe, as Geraldo mentioned, to just download a couple and then just look at them and see what the cloud cover looks like on each scene.
Is the count particularly good? Because you got this box over like wherever you draw in LA, but you could have scenes that are like full up in the box, or just like a little corner of the scene. So you might have those 484 pixels might be good, but it just happens to be because the scene is off on the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe maybe the other stats, like the temperature that Joaldo was looking at before, like for instance with the temperature, if it's really cold, then it might be all clouds, because clouds are really cold. But it also might be hard to tell. What about thumbnails? Are there not thumbnails available for you to look at?
Thumbnails sometimes pop up, but it's not, well, like if they do pop up, you can kind of see if there's like a hole in the image and make a guess on whether to use it or not. But yeah, usually I just download them all and load it all into QGIS and then scroll through.
Does the cloud layer that you can have the option to download, does that have any influence on determining clouds? Like, what does that cloud layer even look like? What is that?
cloud layer is basically data like this, but it's clouds. So
this has all the data that's not cloud areas, and those is all the areas that are like determined to be clouds. Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
it's almost like the opposite. Yeah, the
Okay.
Specifically, the cloud covered data layer is just a binary mask. So if you ever wanted to apply yourself, you can use that to gauge where clouds are.
No, I think that's usually, sometimes I can go back. Sometimes I look at the stats to help figure out like what should I, like, I guess you can look at this instead of looking at the CSV file and try to make an educated guess on what to do, but usually I just
Do you
download.
remember what all those colors are for that bar chart down there?
I don't think so. I usually never look at this page, really.
I don't remember what it is either.
Same
Remember,
here.
Fernando?
No, I was just about to say I don't exactly remember, but it could just, if we're hovering over it, good quality pixel produce best quality.
This might be a good one. Like hover over that big orange one over to the right.
If it's pixel quality value.
Yeah, this might be actually a good one to figure out if it's a good scene or not.
Yeah.
That Fernando and Jada never use, but maybe we learned something new today. That might give you some classification.
So yeah, and so the map, I'm gonna recreate a map because that's the easiest one.
Yeah, so I typically use AppEARS when I know there's going to be data over a specific region. So another useful thing in addition to AppEARS is the Earth data search portal. It's another LPDAC. I recommend you stick with AppEARS, but AppEARS does this. Even though the data is available, like you can tell like the count of acquisitions made over a geography. The LPDAC won't tell, or sorry, the AppEARS LPDAC won't give you that count until after you've made your request, right? It'll hit you with like, yeah, a bunch of scenes were found in this region, but it won't tell you beforehand. So it could also be helpful to take a look at the Earth data search and just gauge, like just I guess just visually gauge the count of scenes over this region. So here you just, it's very simple, just like AppEARS. Actually, let me just reset. Okay, well, it won't let me reset. Oh, there we go. So again, you can find the same information that you can in AppEARS on this guy. And if you type in ECOSTRESS, it's same thing as AppEARS. You can see the products available from this platform. I'm just going to select ET daily. Yeah. And here, this is every scene. This is every possible scene. And that's not so useful. But what is useful is that I can specify a geography and get a count of how many were done. And we can be even more specific by looking at the dates. So down here, there's a little timeline that tells you what these acquisitions look like at specific dates, and you can just cycle through either by month or by year. Depends on the scope of your, the temporal scope of your project. How far back do you want to go, or how little far back you want to go? But I just thought I would briefly bring up this tool because it can be powerful in addition to the LPDAC we just covered. You can, in fact, download the data directly from the Earth data portal, but the data portal gives you the scene, and it gives you a second file with the geolocation. So you kind of have to do some processing to marry these two products. LPDAC does that step for you. And it even clips the imagery to your specified shapefile that you either drew or you uploaded. So I say just use the Earth data search portal for browsing, and then the LPDAC to make your request. That's it. I just wanted to briefly bring that up because that was very helpful to me when I was dealing with really large geographies.
Yeah, right. So kind of different tools for different purposes. Like these large areas, it's a lot of data to just be downloading, straight from AppEARS blindly. And so using this Earth data tool can help you filter a little bit. And also time series, like sometimes you might want a certain area but for like a long time, and Joel alluded to that a little bit, but sometimes Joel will be like, all right, let's look at all of Southwest US this year and last year and the year before, and like do a difference. And so then they had this like long time series. And so, but if you just like, let's get the latest image over LA or over San Francisco or something, you know, then it's easy. You just go to peers and just get what you get. But when you're dealing with a lot of data, you might have to be a little bit more strategic about it, so you're not wasting a lot of time downloading data that, or you're having a peers process data that like ends up being cloudy or not particularly good. So you play around with it a little bit. That's a good tip, Fernando. It also just kind of brings up the idea of like strategies for getting data. You know, there's the quick and dirty, get something fast, and then there's the you know, when you have bigger fish to fry.
I think that overall, we've pretty much covered basically the steps that I take to download data. I could briefly show where you could get some shapefiles. It's not a NASA data portal, but I think it's very useful. The Natural Earth Data Portal. They do a lot of tracing of geography, so you don't have to draw your own California shape layer. You can download one and just use that and upload that to AppEARS. Yeah, there it is. So this guy is particularly useful, and I highly recommend you just takes like maybe 20 minutes to just look through what data is available. It's a rather, I can screen share if you need, but it's going to be very brief because it's pretty straightforward. That's not the homepage. This is the homepage. You literally only need to get data. And they basically ask you, what is the scale that you're going to be working with? This is going to be do you need a lot of detail in the shapefile, or just need like the general shape of the area? And this is another strategy question. If you're working like with the whole country of Costa Rica, then maybe you don't need very fine detail outline. Maybe you just need the really coarse resolution. But yeah, this is a really powerful tool. It saves you a lot of time, and it helps you kind of learn some geography along the way. But yeah, just want to briefly mention that you don't have to draw your own rectangles if you're looking for the specific boundaries of some geography.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Fernando. Little extra sprinkles on this Sunday you guys are making.
You can even, I guess you can even download any previous requests and adjust the like date parameters later. Like if you make the same request every 3 months, you don't have to redo the request. You can, I mean, there's like 3 inputs, so it's not like you're saving that much time either by downloading and re-uploading your request.
Yeah, the instantaneous and uncertainty and the this and then, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was for sure confusing
At first.
Yeah, but once you like get the hang of it, you kind of like figure out like what you need or where to find things and whatnot.
Now that you've downloaded, that Joel has downloaded all the data, I guess, all those layers, was it like 50 data sets, or
Yeah,
you know, in that query, they all end up on Joelda's hard drive somewhere in a folder. And then what happens next, Joelda?
Here, I'm gonna show the map that I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna be recreating this one since I think it's the most tame compared to some of the other ones. But this is just a map I made of Madagascar and some drought conditions and whatnot. And also, I think there was a heat wave actually going on.
Yeah, I think part of Joelda's job and Fernando's job too, I think it was part of Fernando's job, definitely Joelda's, was every week they would like just look up in the news what the latest disaster was and try to go see if there was ECOSTRESS acquisitions, you know, cloud-free acquisitions during that disaster. And so Fernando, you did that too, right? Yeah, that's right, you did, because when you weren't doing it, you were doing mycorrhizal stuff. So so I think both of them had different like news sources and email lists or whatever it was to pick up from. So like the latest disaster this week would probably be that Tonga volcanic eruption. That was pretty cool. Like that would be cool to see if we got that in ECOSTRESS. But part of it was like to like do these media press releases that Fernando and Joelda would contribute to stay relevant. For you guys, for you three, I think it'll be similar. Like we'll be interested in creating some interesting stuff. If you find some stuff with ECOSTRESS, we can ship it over to the ECOSTRESS team back at JPL, and they can put it out there and create a press release that you will have created, because the ECOSTRESS team is super strapped for like personnel. And so you would think, oh, of course somebody did that Tonga eruption, but probably nobody did, right? So you guys could be the first ones to do it. And then as we get into hydrosat data, it's going to be very similar. So like, whatever's cutting edge, and then doing more complicated analyses, which I think Joelda and Fernando were starting to poke at, in between times as well. But some of this does take a while. It would take Joelda a week to like look through what the latest disaster was, download all the data for the area, filter through it, and then go back and forth with me for like every day for 4 days on like creating the prettiest map ever to really illustrate like the impact, whether it was a drought or a heat wave or some difference between this year and last year. Fernando did the same with like locust infestations and degradation in national parks and things like that. So, and Fernando had a lot of cartography, like fun with it. I think Joelda did a little bit, although I maybe nixed more of Joelda's color schemes than Fernando's. Fernando's were a little bit, but I tried to encourage some creativity there too.
Yeah.
Okay, so so there was the heat wave. So Joelda basically looked up, saw that there was a heat wave in Madagascar, said, Josh, does this look good? I said, yeah, go see what you can see. And then Joelda said, oh, there's some data. Look, it looks really hot there. I'm like, all right, let's make a map. So that's how that map got created.
Yeah, so I'll share my desktop.
But it doesn't start like this. It starts much uglier.
Yeah. All right, so now I'll open up QGIS.
So QGIS, right? So Miles and Ethan, you have QGIS. Ryan, you're still struggling to get it, but Miles says he'll help you out on trying to get it to work if you can't get it to work. Did you guys get the all feature option or like the streamline option?
I think this is some sort of streamlined option. The new one wasn't working for me. I don't know what's going on. So I just got an older version.
Okay. How about you, Fernando?
I'm on the latest patch. QGIS works friendlier with Linux, I have found, and Windows. Mac breaks a lot, and the fix tends to be pretty annoying, but it's doable. I can also chip in if it's a weird error. I fixed it like 1,000 times on my old MacBook, so maybe I can help installing it.
That's good information. I mean, so that's what you were saying, Miles, too, right? You didn't get it to work on Macs, you got it to work on Linux. But what about you, Ethan? Did you get it to work on Mac?
I got to work on Mac. I remember that the issue Ryan is having, I did originally have, if you remember too. But I think I just looked it up on the internet, just how to fix it. And I think I got it done, but I forgot what exactly I looked up and what exactly I did.
Okay.
So I can also help Ryan out too if he needs it.
Okay. So you did get it to work on Mac eventually?
Yeah, it's downloaded right now. I can.
But it didn't work at first.
No, not at first. I forgot the problem, and all I remember is I just looked it up and was able to fix it. It. So, but yeah, I know what I'm seeing right now on the screen right now. That's exactly what I can see when I open up.
What were you gonna say, Joelda?
I also had a problem, and I think it's technically still a problem. The problem was that like my Mac didn't want to open it because it was like downloaded from the internet, and I don't know, it can scan for viruses. But I think I just forced it to open. And
I think that was the same thing.
Yeah, so I just right clicked and clicked open when here, I'm gonna just quit this.
Oh,
I just right clicked and clicked open, and then it just forced it, like it gave some options and I click open and then it forced itself open.
huh.
So
You guys are lucky. I had issues with like dependencies.
oh
Okay, yeah, that's too bad. So yeah, I apologize to Miles and Ethan for giving you headaches on QGIS. I thought it would be easier to install.
Oh, it wasn't that bad.
Okay, but hopefully Ryan won't have too many more headaches getting it installed.
Well, he has a lot of help here.
so so this is what it looks like when you open this. This was something I was recreating it earlier just so I remembered all the steps, but that's just that. But we'll click new empty project. And so this is what you're working with. So the first thing that I always do, this is a plugin that you have to install, but if you want, it's basically a base map for all your maps. So you can select all these, but if you don't have it installed, it's called HCMGIS. You just go to plugins, manage and install plugins, and that will load. And then you can just search it up. It's not going to show up because I already installed it, but it's right here. So you'll install it and then it will pop up on your dashboard and then that will be good. So usually first thing I do is do Google Satellite because that's the easiest. So now you have a base map to work with. And then I would load in the data that I want to use. So say I guess I went through all the GeoTIFF files that I was planning on using and I chose one. I would go to raster, oh, not raster, sorry, layer, and then add layer. And then you would go to add raster layer. And so then go to your files, and then I'm pretty sure it is this one, yeah.
Why are you pretty sure it's that one? How did you know it was that one?
Well, this is from, I was downloading a bunch of files and some of them weren't working, but I hovered over this and I saw that this was the only land surface temperature file that I have, which is what I'm going to be working with. And also you can kind of get information about the file from its name. So this first number here, so 14269, that's the orbit, I'm pretty sure. And then this is 16 would be the scene ID. And then following that is the date. So it's actually confusing. I didn't know this before, but usually depending on where you download your file from, it's the year and then the day number of the year. So not like the month and the day, but like day 265 of the year. And then it gives you a time. But I think this just has the year, day, and month.
Yeah, and the orbit is basically how many times around the Earth ECOSTRESS has gone. Yeah. So the very first time we went around the Earth, the first scene was 1. And now it looks like for this data that Joel downloaded, we've gone around 14,000 times around the Earth. And then for each of these orbits, so then like when you start over again, wherever we started, I can't remember, UTC or something, then we chop up so basically it's like scanning, it's like a big scan line over the whole Earth. And so then we chop up the scan line into squares, what we call scenes. And they're approximately like a few hundred kilometers by a few hundred kilometers. And so this is the 16th square along that orbit around the Earth. So it's just kind of some interesting engineering background, but useful because you'll need to preserve that information at some point when you make your map to say this is where the data were from, so that people can reproduce the data if they want to. You can't just say, I randomly got this one scene in Madagascar. I'm not going to tell you where or how I got it, but it exists. You kind of want to give all the information so people can do it again. Yeah. And then you knew it was this TIFF as opposed to the other TIFFs.
So
yeah,
this one obviously says evaporative stress index. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of the date format I was talking about. So it's from 2020 and it's day 189 of 2020. And then it's at 07 hours, 20 minutes and 47 seconds. So And so the CSV file I was talking about with appears earlier gives you all the information on the date and the time, the scene, and the orbit and everything. So you can look at that instead of like decoding the file name. So yeah, so.
And when you get it as GeoTIFFs, it's all that you just need that one file. You don't need any other files, right?
Yeah.
So like, and that's where the beauty of appears comes into play, because there's actually technically two files that they merge. There's the temperature or the evapotranspiration, and then there's the location. And so you used to have to download, and I think you guys did a tutorial, Miles and Ethan, where you had to download the location and the actual file. Appears has it so you never have to think about that ever again, which is nice.
Yeah,
and actually EcoStress is releasing now these GeoTIFFs, so you don't have to have Appears do it for you. So it'll actually be a lot faster to retrieve the data from Appears, because right now you saw that like scroll status bar of the download from Joalda, it was like 47%. That was Appears in the back end mushing together those two files for you. And now that's going to be done at JPL before it's delivered to Appears. So now when you request a GeoTIFF, it'll be like that. It'll take a while. They're forward processing and back processing. So anything recent will be fast. Anything back might be a little slow still.
Yeah, super helpful. So I'll open this file and then let me move you guys to the side. And then I'll click add. So close that. And so if you look down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but okay, cool.
Yeah,
if you look right here, you can see that the file is right there. So I'm going to zoom in. Or you could also right click and then zoom to layer, and it'll take you to where the layer is. So here's the square basically. And so right now, like you can't really see anything, but we're gonna change that with properties.
With magic. Yeah, this looks super ugly. It snows in Madagascar. What is all?
So where you go to start that? So you right click the file and I click properties. So you open up your properties, and then in order to change what this file looks like, you go to symbology right here. And so right now it starts as single band gray, but if you want to add any color to it and whatnot, you're going to have to change the render type. So what I usually do is instead choose single band pseudo color, because this is obviously going to be a false color image. And so after that, you can change the min and max value settings based off what you want to do. Usually I change it to cumulative count cut, just because it's a better representation of the data than just using the min and max values. But yeah, and then I change the statistics extent to update canvas, because basically this will change the color ramp as you are like zooming in and out of the photo, so it will automatically adjust, which is helpful. So yeah, so here you have your different color ramps. And so if you go to all color ramps, there's plenty here, and you can make your new color and your own color ramp if you really want to, which I did sometimes, depending on like if like a specific map needed something. I know there's like an evapotranspiration specific color map for ECOSTRESS.
Yeah, which you can download. But yeah, Joaldo was saying that sometimes you might want to customize the color scale, and that might happen especially when you want to really bring out features, because this comes back to communication. Like, what are you trying to communicate? So if there's like a fire or something, like Joaldo would make that fire look really red, you know, like a fire, and everything else like kind of dull looking. So not necessarily a continuous color scale. Fernando, I think, kind of paid attention a lot to colorblind, you know, disability access. And then also just, you know, as Fernando was playing around with matching like Van Gogh, you know, can he match those colors exactly? So there's things to play around with.
Yeah. So yeah. So here I started with spectral for this one just because it was an easy choice for a temperature map. Though since they have red as the low values and blue as the high values, I just flipped it. So it kind of matches our perception of temperature. So yeah,
What
And
was
so,
what was the cumulative count cut again? What's that do, Jada?
basically it kind of changes. I think it, from my understanding, it, for anyone can, you can correct me, but it just chooses where the highest density of value, I don't know, something along the lines of the data looking, being more realistic of some sort.
Wait, what?
Fernando, did you do the cumulative count cut before?
Yeah. Yes. So yes, Jalo, to expand on what she said, it has to do with binning and the available colors in the color ramp. So these colors, it's not 255, 255, 255. It's limited to that blue and red, and it has to like create like statistical bins. Like if we look at the histogram actually on the left-hand side, under transparency, and if we compute the histogram for this raster, it grabs, so if you grab minimum and maximum, it stretches the available RGB values for this ramp to every single float within this histogram. And there's way many more floating numbers between the maximum and minimum of this LSD file. So like it gets stretched really badly if we're only using grayscale. And if we're only using one color ramp from blue to red, it also gets stretched and it doesn't look very, you don't get very much information. What we want to do is we want to zoom in to the statistics of just our area of interest. So you can do this a couple ways. You can either find it yourself and draw like a square and calculate zonal statistics, or you can do what Geraldo is doing and just like zoom into one geography and have QGIS calculate the local statistics of the canvas itself, of what you're currently looking at in QGIS. And that's far more helpful. And what cumulative cut is really doing is it's basically doing this. It's just using your standard deviation. And I forget what else. I don't remember the mathematics behind.
Yeah, that was a good explanation, Fernando. And I like how you linked to Ryan's math background too, because it might be something, Ryan, that you might be interested in pursuing is what can the mathematical shape of a distribution of values reveal about some process on the ground? What can it reveal about how heat waves are sweeping through, Madagascar, how cities are impacted, how certain tree species are impacted more than others? So there might be something interesting for you to explore as we, yeah, definitely like linking to everyone's interests. Ethan, you might be interested more on like how you handle big data, right? From the data science background, and Miles, just, all the different things you can do with all these data might be more interesting to you. There you go. It turned beautiful.
Yeah, now you have like information you can work with. So now that I've applied the color, it looks more like a map. You can look around and kind of see how like you can see on the left over here, the numbers changing based off where you're looking, and that's based off the updated canvas option. But
oh yeah, and this is in Kelvin, which nobody is used to. But I think, I imagine, Joanna, after you've looked at so many maps in Kelvin, you start to get a feel for like Kelvin values.
yeah. You definitely get used to it. And then you can see some ocean, and here's some clouds, I'm pretty sure these are. So,
oh yeah, you can start to see clouds without knowing they're clouds based on how they look spatially.
Yeah. So yeah, and so usually what I do after this is add some transparency to the image, and not only does it help make it pop, it also kind of makes it look more, I guess, realistic in a way without it.
Yeah, a little bit more 3D.
Yeah, so you can go here to transparency, and you can play with this based off what you think looks the best, but usually I start at 70% and go off of that. So obviously that changes how it looks.
So the 70% gives it more texture and depth and realism, but it also makes it less vibrant. So, then you might play with the saturation of the colors to bring that vibrancy out.
And something you can also do is change what the base map looks like. If you go to properties and symbology, you can change the brightness and contrast and whatnot. But yeah, so usually if you saw my original image, I kind of did like a coastal sort of bit here. So as you can see, like there's the ocean part of the image is still in here. So what I would do for that is usually just crop this image. I don't know if it's worth showing how to crop an image, if it's, or
if you could do it in 2 minutes.
yeah, I can do that. So what you'll need is just the shape file that you want to crop by. So if since I'm working with Madagascar, I'm going to want a Madagascar shapefile, and you can get that from the website that Fernando shared earlier. And I already have that. So I'm just gonna, you would go to layer, and then you would add your layer, and then you would add a vector layer because it's a shapefile. So
right, so vector layers are like curvy stuff, and then raster layers are pixely stuff. That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. So here I'm adding that, then I add, and so also I didn't mention this, but the hierarchy of your things on the left is kind of determines how it's placed. So Madagascar is under the geotiff, so that's why it's yellow under. But if I move this under and I open this, then obviously Madagascar is on top. So to quickly clip something, you would just, so you have your shapefile that you want to clip by. So this will get rid of the ocean. So where you'll go is raster, and then you'll go to extraction, and then you'll clip raster by a mask layer. And so I found the shapefile already, so I just choose TIFF.
It's like a cookie cutter. So we've got this Madagascar cookie cutter, and the dough is ECOSTRESS. And so then I'll just like cutting out this shape. So they're gonna make a Madagascar cookie.
Yes. And it'll take like 30 seconds for the algorithm. And I think you can like do more of this if you like use Python, but yeah, so now.
Yeah, so one of the things, especially Ethan and Ryan too, is for you to just play with all these features in QGIS, you know, just play with them and just start to get like figure out what they do. You know, there's things that you'll use more than others, like these clipping functions and transparency and symbology, but I just want you to like kind of click through and just get a feel for like all the different things one can do with data and maps.
Yep. So now you can see the ocean is gone because I used that shapefile. So this was the old file. And to quickly use the changes I applied to the last one, you could just right click, go style, you can copy style, and then you can paste it on your thing. So now we have a crop.
That's an important option because sometimes you'll have lots of ECOSTRESS layers, you know, from different times, or a bigger scene where you're piecing together the different scenes, and you want that same color scheme applied to all of it. So you'll want to be copying that, whatever you've chosen across.
Yep. So great. Now I have my image, and I think this is, for me, I would move on to making the actual map. I can like make more changes based off what I need to do, but now I'll like work on like configuring everything, like placing, like zooming in on a specific spot, making the insets, make the color ramp and whatnot. So yeah, so to make your map, you're gonna go up here to the top, you're gonna go to project, and basically a map is called a layout. And you can make multiple layouts for a specific QGIS project. But how you do that is you click new print layout. And then you give it a name. I'll name this Madagascar and click OK. So now we are in this new window to make our map. Here's the project on this tab, and here's the map making format. So there's a lot of options here, and like at first it's confusing, but if you hover over them, you can kind of see what each of them do and how you can use them. So yeah, so first things first, you want to add the QGIS image that you have over here. So you click on this add map button, and it's just a piece of paper with like a little curved bit on the end. And to recreate the other map, I made this full screen. So there's that. So now you have your map. And if you click on move item content right here, you can actually move within the map without like moving your actual item. So if we want to kind of recreate what I made last time. I think I focused on this area over here. So I zoomed in, and here I have this area, and I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. I'm gonna make this the main background for my map. And so now that I've positioned this in the way that I want, I'm gonna first lock the map here, and this is so you don't move it. So now I can't like move the map whatsoever if I click on it. And something that QGIS does, if you edit your, if you edit your map over here, like say if I turn this off, if you go here, oh, okay, here, there we go, sorry. So if I go to my project and I turn this on and I refresh, obviously that turns on. And if you want to lock it so that if you are doing something else and you don't want this image to change, you can go to the right over here, click lock layers. And now if I go here and I turn off my map, this won't turn off even if I refresh it, which is good if you're working with multiple maps on your one project. So you can edit things without other things being affected. So here I'm going to zoom in to where I was before. Oop, I zoomed in too much. I think it was like right here. So yeah. So this is going to serve as my base.
There'll be a little bit of a juggle, like a mental juggle as to like what's in the layout view versus what's in the actual map view, and like, you know, you kind of just like, oh, I thought I did something there, it didn't work over there, or like how do I refresh? And but after a while you just kind of get used to it. But there's a little bit of a mental juggle exercise.
Yeah, it's definitely like a lot to start off with, but like you get the hang of it as you make more maps and you figure out the tricks and whatnot. So yeah, so next thing I will quickly show is how to make, I guess, another map and make this like little inset that I have here. I'll just do one just for demonstration purposes. So basically you go to your, I've locked this so it can't move even if I click on it. And you go here, you basically add another map. And so here I'm going to go to my project. Currently my map is off, so I'm going to turn it on. And so it's appeared. And now I'm going to zoom in on a area I want to focus on if I want to make an inset. So say I want to focus on this red blob over here to, I don't know, I guess focus on the heat wave. So I'm going to zoom in and say that this is what I want my inset to be. So I'll lock this so it doesn't change. And then I'll also lock its position. And since like you can kind of see it's blending into my current map, you can add a frame to basically any map you make. So I'm on map 2. Scroll down, click frame, and then you can just, I'll make it white, and then you can just add a frame around it so it is distinguished by its frame and whatnot. So yeah. And so to add the little line and the little box to show that it's an inset, you just, once again, go to your tools over here. For lines, you're going to click on add node item, add polyline, then you're going to click one point, click another point, right click the X, and then you have a line. So basically the step is really just fine tuning the map and making it clear on what you're showing and whatnot. And so here you can edit the line. I'll make it white to match what I have, and then you can increase the width. So yeah, and then for a rectangle, you go to your polygons over here, or add shape, add rectangle. You have a rectangle, and then you can click edit the style here, and you can make it an outline. You'll see that there's a lot of options, and it's very overwhelming at first, and you might wonder, how am I supposed to remember all this? I promise it gets easier as you make more and more. takes a bit of getting used to. But yeah, so cool. I have my inset. And so say that's all I want to do with the inset. Next thing I can do is add my color bar, which is very important for a map like this because people are going to want to know what the colors mean. So what you'll do is you'll make another rectangle. So add a rectangle. I'll make the color bar up here. And so now you have your rectangle. You go to style to edit the style. You click on simple fill. Instead of simple fill, since we want a gradient to kind of show the changes in color, that's not what I want to do. So simple fill, you'll do gradient fill. You'll select color ramp, and then here you can choose whatever color ramp you were using before. So I used spectral and I inverted it, so I'm going to invert it. And as you can see, it's currently a vertical color ramp. So if you scroll down right here, you can rotate your color ramp. I'm going to rotate by 90 degrees, and then boom, you have a great color ramp. So, and you can add a frame around this as well to kind of make it like distinguishable. And then in order to like add text to your
Joanna, if you've edited like that color bar, as you were saying before, how would you find your edited color bar? You have to save it somewhere, right?
Yeah, so usually you'll have a saved color bar if you like make a custom one, or you just edited a existing one. So if you want to find it, you'll just click this arrow on the side and go to all color ramps, and it will be in this list.
And it'll be like Joalda's ramp of January 2022.
Yeah, so you'll just click that and it'll be there. So yeah, and so in order to add text, you want to go, you once again go to your tools on the left, you click to add label, and then you can have lorem ipsum, and then you can type whatever, and you can format it, change the font size and whatnot, and you'll obviously be adding information about the map. So you'll add the minimum and the maximum. And usually how I do this is when you go back to the project and you can look at these numbers. And since I have it on updated canvas, these numbers will change depending on how like you have the map situated. So it's important to have like, I guess, the same extent on this image as you do on this image, so that you have the right numbers. So yeah, so here the minimum is 299, maximum is 310, and you would just add those numbers to your color ramp.
But those arrow keys can set the extent of your canvas to what you're currently looking at on your map. So to get a definite, like what are my minimum and maximums, you can use these tools to set the map extent exactly where your map is, so you can get an accurate measurement of your minimum and your maximum for your color ramp. It's just to know, I don't know why they switched the buttons. There used to be words before that just said what they were, but not anymore. But yeah.
That's super helpful. So yeah. So now you have, well, a color ramp in theory, and you have your inset. What are some other things you can add to make this a good map? Well, first you should probably add, well, if you're working under Josh, you would add a North Star somewhere. So I'll add one in the corner right here. And this is just a button, add North arrow. And so this is North arrow right here. And then on the side, if you look over here, there's more types of North arrows you can choose from. Just choose one based off the vibes you're getting from each of them, but you can just stick with this one. And so you can put this wherever it makes sense. So you can put it up there or down there, but we'll just stick to right here. Something else that's important is putting all the information about this specific image on the map. So right here, I have the date times and local time. So like what time this image was taken, the orbit, and the scene number, as we explained before, which product this is. So this is land surface temperature. So it's ECOSTRESS level 2 land surface temperature. And that's usually everything that I would put. And so you can add text once again using the text box. and then include like everything you would need to add right here, and then change the font and color and whatnot. And then something else that's super important is adding a scale bar. So thankfully QGIS does the scaling for you. You don't have to really do much except like kind of edit what it looks like. So you go on the tools, like once again right here, add scale bar, and you can add it right here just so it's clear. And so something to make sure is if you have multiple maps, so we have two maps, the main big map and the inset map, and those are obviously of two different scales. So you can see on item properties for my scale bar right here that this is attached to map 1, so my bigger map. You can edit kind of what the scale bar looks like down here, kind of like I don't know, design aesthetics and whatnot, and do whatever you want to do right here. So for example, this is another version, hollow, just based off whatever you want to do or whatever you think is necessary. So there's your scale bar, and then I would add another scale bar for the inset, just so it's clear that this is another scale. And here you can, based off where you like put the scale bar, it'll automatically choose one, and so this is attached to map 2. So yeah, so you can edit how that looks. You can make the numbers bolder and whatnot if you scroll down here to display and whatnot, and so you can edit that. So you have your scale bar, you have your color bar, you have your information, you have your North Star, you have insets, and that's basically like everything you generally need. And then the rest of it is really just aesthetics. So for example, in the bottom left corner here, I have like a bigger picture of the world. And so people can kind of know where in Madagascar this is. And I have a red dot to symbolize that. And then you can see there's Africa on the side and whatnot. And obviously this is a Google Earth picture. And then also like up here, I say this is an ECOSTRESS image, and this is just a regular visible image. And then also like a city name usually helps to kind of help people place where things are. But yeah, that's kind of like the general like steps to making a map, or like all the essentials. Obviously this one does not look map ready, and like usually I would like make a draft and then I would send it to Josh and be like, erase everything. Or well, you wouldn't say erase everything, but like obviously like
we would tinker with colors and line thicknesses and everything very closely. But yeah, I mean, it looks good. Even this like quick and dirty map that Joelda made looks like a good map. It looks like Joelda got some cool data over Madagascar, and it's clearly showing this heat wave over one of their major cities. It's this giant red blob. And there's things like these blue speckles in the red blob, and those are probably clouds because they look like clouds. And so maybe we can make them transparent or turn them white, or do something. But like looks like you made them transparent or white there or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So this one was pretty badass. This one that Joel is showing right now. This one is probably one of the more shared ones, the most shared ones out of ECOSTRESS in recent times. Because there were so many fires. You remember all those fires in, what was it, 2020? No, 2019? 2020. Yeah, in California. And at first Joelda just like did one, and then Joelda did another, and we're like, what if we made this collage? And it took Joelda a while to do this because it's like a lot of maps, and like to make them all look good with each other, even though they're all kind of different. And this really kind of blew up on the internets.
And I think that's very helpful. So I definitely do recommend you take a look at the QGIS tutorials. They're free and they're constantly updated with every new release of QGIS.
It's also a good option just doing comparison images. And I also actually have this GIF I made of a volcano that erupted. I think this was a draft GIF I made, but you can also like take multiple images, put it into like a GIF maker, and then boom, you have like a GIF that's kind of showing.
Yeah, that's cool.